What's going on? It is last call for fantasy football. As always, myself, Kyle, Justin here on Saturday, June 8th. Back with another episode. We are going to start with a segment that we like to call Pitcher Perfect Landing Spots. So, a little double entendre. Beer pitcher, last call. The beer puns are going to be coming your way all season. So, we got Pitcher Perfect Landing Spots. Essentially, that is the free agents or trade acquisitions for teams this year that we think are interesting, whether for better or for worse. So we're going to run through some of our new acquisitions that we think are going to be fantasy impacts and at value, maybe be undervalued or overvalued. So just assessing the landing spots, giving our takes on that, and we can take it from there. So anything for you, J-Bo, to get this show started?
No.
Yeah, normally we got some news, but we recorded
There's no news. I scoured the internet. There's just nothing out there right now. It's the off season. Did you see that Pat McAfee kick in the concave?
the soccer thing, the
Yeah,
cross.
that was sick, right?
Apparently, he was a sick soccer player. I mean, I would assume a lot of the pro
I think he
kickers.
grew up playing soccer, and then in high school he actually turned into a kicker.
Okay, I mean,
He
well,
said he wanted to run less sprints. So
the former soccer player myself, it's terrible. Just
yeah.
I had to play defense because I could not handle running the full length of the field the whole time. There's no way. But
Apparently he pulled his hamstring though.
it's probably for the better. He might have kept playing soccer. And
No, like he pulled his hamstring. Like
in that.
game.
Oh, well, he's retired. He don't need hamstrings.
Yeah, apparently he's 37 years old already.
Well, how long was his career?
Not long. It's like 6 or 7 years.
What?
Yeah.
Bro, it's got to be longer than that. Only 6-7
Okay.
years as a punter? I feel like.
Yeah, he retired really early. That's everybody criticized him for it.
Oh, well, I was gonna say because he was a beast in the league, and I just assumed he'd, most people play as long as they can. So
Yeah.
for him to be 37, when was his last year in the league?
Well, the Colts didn't want to re-sign him, and he was like, "I don't want to play anywhere else." So
Oh, when was that?
I think it was like 2016 or 17.
And it took him 6 years to become the global phenomenon, sports phenomenon, podcaster, show host,
3 years.
college game
been-
day.
He's been that for 3 years now. So
It's been 3 years since he started that.
it's been it's been 6 years.
Oh,
But like he was a global phenomenon 3 years ago.
yeah. Nah,
So
show's too damn long. I can't watch the whole thing.
no, I listen to it every week.
Nah, ain't no way. That's why we're gonna keep this one short and sweet for you guys today.
We're
Hopefully,
gonna try.
hopefully we're gonna try. We can get to talking, and we try and keep these around an hour, and I think we've accomplished it maybe one time. So we're on episode 6 now.
First 2 episodes.
2 episodes under an hour. So we're making progress, but we're gonna try and keep it under an hour. Like I said, we're doing picture perfect landing spots. It's a Saturday, so not a whole lot of news has broke since the last time we recorded, which I think was only a few days ago. I think it was last Thursday, or it was Thursday. So we're looking to not have too much new information come your guys' way. But yeah, without further ado, we can get it started. So we're gonna run through 2 players at the quarterback, wide receiver, and running back position. New additions that we find interesting. We're going to do tight ends. There's none that are interesting. So, or at least for fantasy wise, or for fantasy purposes. So we are going to start with the running backs. So my first pick for a positive landing spot. This is a player who I think is going to take another step forward even from their rookie year, and that's really hard to do because this person had one of the best rookie running back seasons of all time. And if you haven't figured it out, it is Saquon Barkley. So Saquon Barkley just signed a 3-year, $37.75 million deal. 26 million guaranteed with the Eagles. He spent from 2018 to last year with the Giants. For better or for worse, he's had to deal with the Giants being the Giants. The past couple years specifically have been him. He has been the team. He has been the focal point. They have no other weapons aside from him. So, for fantasy purposes, he has been a pure volume play. His yards per carry has been shaky, going forward. So, or previously. So, I think with him landing at the Eagles, he is due for a team that knows how to utilize their playmakers. They listen to them. Clearly, we've seen AJ Brown, bitch and moan about his usage, and when they figure it out, when they're clicking on all cylinders, they figure it out from a fantasy perspective. So, Saquon Barkley, he is going to be on a much better offense where he doesn't have to be everything for the team. He's as talented as they get. I know Justin thinks he's seen him decline over the years. I haven't seen that, just from unfortunately having to watch the Giants play.
I don't think it's been a large decline. I just don't think that I don't know, maybe he added a little bit more weight or whatever. I just don't think he's quite as fast, quite as elusive as he used to be. Maybe he doesn't trust the angles he used to put his legs on because of the ACL tears and stuff like that. So
I just think his woes have come purely from a situational point of view. I mean, the stats we have pulled up right now for him last year was 14 games played. He had 962 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns and added in 280 yards receiving and 4 receiving touchdowns. So 10 total touchdowns, with about a little over 1,100 scrimmage yards. Like, that's a good fantasy season. Dealing with a terrible team.
Is like, that is not if all the running backs had stayed healthy last year, he may have even fallen to like the 10th or maybe even outside the top 10 if that was his stats for last year and everybody was healthy.
Yeah. And
so that's my fear, is that he goes to a better team where they don't need him as much. He may not get as much volume. He may have touchdowns vultured by Jalen Hurts.
I mean, that's a fear, with the tush push and the goal line. Are they just going to shove Jalen Hurts' ass in there 3 times, 4 times?
Yeah.
Probably.
And the drop-offs, too. I mean, if Jalen Hurts is in trouble, typically he doesn't drop the ball off. He just takes off himself. So is he going to get as many receptions as he did in the Giants? I don't think so.
He had 41 receptions on the Giants last year. I just think that the overall betterment of his situation is going to make up for maybe the lack of volume that he'll get, because there are more mouths to feed. So he may not get an increased amount of rushing attempts or even targets because they have elite weapons on the outside. But I just think he's going to benefit from a lesser workload, maybe stay healthy, maybe play 17, and be more efficient, and it's going to make up for that. So I think it's a great landing spot. It is my pitcher perfect landing spot for running backs, and I'll let Justin take it away with his.
And my perfect spot is DeAndre Swift. I think he went to a team that desperately needed just anybody decent at running back. There's nobody else on the depth chart to really take over snaps. I believe Deonta Foreman even went somewhere. Where'd he go? Anyways, doesn't matter. He's only 25, which I feel like people think of DeAndre Swift and they think, he's just veteran back. He's getting older. He's only 25. And honestly, when he's been healthy and he's given the opportunity, he's been great. It's really just been the injuries, I think, that's kind of plagued his career so far. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than that. I think as a player, I just love to watch him play. I think he's very similar to Jahmyr Gibbs. They were drafted to be similar players. I think the Lions just moved on a little too early, didn't get to let him develop into the player that he is now. He played excellent on the Eagles last year, and I don't see any reason why he shouldn't play excellent on the Bears.
Yeah, I believe the second half of the year was much worse for DeAndre Swift than the first half. I remember um, his name's going to come up again. Our boy Christian, his team, he had DeAndre Swift, and we were clowning his team because Christian's team was bad. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh, DeAndre Swift, blah, blah, blah. And then like 3, 4 weeks into the year, I'm like, I might try and trade for DeAndre Swift. And he was good. I mean, he had
The issue is
1,000.
that was the only good player he had.
Right.
You can't trade for the only good player somebody has. They won't let him go.
But it just the point the reason I bring that up is I didn't expect that from DeAndre Swift to start the year. I don't think many people did. He just came out the gates flying and had 1,049 total rush yards, 6 total touchdowns, 5 on the ground, and that's the issue. Is DeAndre Swift only had 5 touchdowns on the ground. How many rushing touchdowns did Jalen Hurts have? How many memes were being passed around the league being like DeAndre Swift begging at Jalen Hurts' feet, being like, please, sir, can I have one?
That's why I think this is a perfect spot for him as well. Though is I want to say the Bears struggled a lot in the red zone last year. I think that was a big problem for them. So hopefully he can get those touchdown carries and back again. That's what the problem was for me and Saquon.
Yeah. And
I could very easily see that happening for Saquon, but
they,
we're not talking about him. We're talking about DeAndre Swift now.
but in reality, I had something I wanted to, and so I guess it kind of pertains to these players. So essentially, Saquon is to come in and replace DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift had 229 carries last year with the Eagles. Saquon had 247 with the Giants. So DeAndre Swift had a ton of opportunities with the Eagles, very similar to what Saquon had. And I think that the Bears saw what they liked in DeAndre Swift, and the Eagles said, we want to try and capitalize on Saquon's availability. So I think it's a win-win for both these teams. So I agree that DeAndre Swift is going to be, I think he's undervalued, and a rookie quarterback coming in is going to need a reliable running back, someone who can be in there for
another run game a lot.
Exactly, and to be a security blanket for him for Caleb Williams coming in. Rookie quarterbacks love throwing to their running back, and I don't have his ADP off the top of my head, but DeAndre Swift is being undervalued. So I'm in. I think that's a picture-perfect landing spot for him coming through. Roschon Johnson and Khalil Herbert don't scare me. They gave DeAndre Swift a pretty big bag, and I think they brought him in.
Wait, Tariq Cohen came back, right?
With the Jets or something. He signed on the practice squad, but yeah, I think it's a picture perfect landing spot, and I could see him being on my teams this year, just depending on where he's valued. If I go heavy wide receiver,
if I can snag him as my running back 2 or 3. Oh yeah,
yeah, and just depends on your roster construction. But I don't think you can go wrong. I think he's due for another big year, especially only being 25 years old. I mean, dude's legit. But on to lesser positive notes, we also have some not picture perfect landing spots, and not that these players were necessarily out on, but we are not as high on them in this particular year, in this particular role, in that particular team after the acquisition than what consensus might be, or just the general feeling. So my first not picture perfect landing spot is Gus Edwards, and it's not that the landing spot is bad, because it's a wide open running back room. There isn't an established back in there at all. I mean, Austin Eckler is gone, and he was everything for that team. So it's not necessarily the landing spot, it's the player in the landing spot. Gus Edwards is being talked about as he's the bell cow. He's going to be that guy. Just read a quote earlier from their GM saying that he is the bell cow back. He's the goal line guy. He is everything for this team. So everyone is up in arms, going crazy over Gus Edwards. He just wasn't good football. He wasn't a good football player last year on the Ravens. He yes, comes in a presumed starting role, but he had 13 rushing touchdowns and he didn't eclipse 100 yards on the ground one time. And I know he didn't have a ton of carries, but even his touchdowns, it was all red zone stuff. So I think he is being overinflated as this bell cow running back on a run first team, projected to be run first team, and coming off his total fantasy finish last year, and running back 14, but 810 total yards. I mean,
Yeah, super touchdown dependent and just. I mean, if you watched him play, he looked terrible,
he's just a
and
big,
he's never really
lumbering
looked
dude.
good. I think the first season that he broke out, he did look decent. I want to say he actually had a really high yards per carry that year, but since then, what he's had 2 ACL tears since then, and he's already a bigger guy, and he's washed. I would be more surprised if Gus Edwards did better than J.K. Dobbins this year.
I think. Well, I don't have much faith in J.K. Dobbins at all. I think they'd need a miracle for him to usurp Gus or be as explosive as he was, which really sucks because I like J.K. Dobbins a lot as a player, but I just don't see a world where he repeats on that touchdown efficiency and can maintain the workload and be that guy. And I think this is purely the Chargers upper management. During the draft, they said, look, we have holes in a bunch of different places. We can make do with running backs this year, but we're not going to invest highly in the draft to get someone in right now. A new coach, new system coming in, your top options leave, which that is a counterpoint where it's like your top receiving options leave. So how are you not going to even support the running game? But I think this might be a not a throwaway year, but a transition year. Yeah, it's a transition year for the Chargers. So I think Gus Edwards, a combination of a player and landing spot, makes it not so picture perfect. So, Justin, who is being overinflated in your mind at the running back position on their new team?
I think Josh Jacobs is being super overinflated for a season that he had a couple of years ago. Don't get me wrong, that season was incredible. I actually looked back at that season today, and I was like, oh my gosh.
1,612.
Yeah, that season was insane. But that's the only season that he's really been that guy. And he did not repeat that last year. He actually really sucked.
Yeah, he was not good last year.
Yeah, he only averaged over 4 yards a carry one time last year. And it wasn't anything insane. It was like 5.2 or something like that. That's bad. That's really bad. Just for reference, like a good running back, let's say a top 10 running back, they probably average 5 yards a carry the entire season.
Yeah, if it's a good year for them, if it's a good year, they'll creep up close to 5. I mean, in his insane year,
I don't have it on here either, but just looking at his yards per carry, he was probably around 3.7.
3.45 is what his yards per carry was. But for reference, in his insane year in 2022, he was 4.86.
Yeah. So that isn't even that good. I mean, it is actually really good, but it's not like Christian McCaffrey or anything like that. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying he's very reliant on volume. Yeah. So if he doesn't get that, if he shares time with AJ Dillon, he's not going to do very well. If he shares any time with any other running back, he is not going to do anywhere near what he did even last year. I also believe that the Packers might have some offensive line problems. I think Bakhtiari retired.
Yeah.
Right? So.
I
am on. He's going really high right now.
I'm on the opposite side. I think he's still a talented player. The Raiders were a dumpster fire last year with their firing of their coach and changing of the guard. I just don't think that 1 year is prescriptive of what he can do on a much better franchise, a much better team, much better offense with a better quarterback. It's very similar to Saquon in that regard. Um, down years with heavy utilization, coming off of heavy utilization and just being in a better situation. They drafted Marshawn Lloyd, I believe, in the fourth round. So that would be a potential concern I would have, is if Josh Jacobs doesn't have it anymore and he
What
is
makes you
on
say he's going to be? What makes you say he's going to a better situation other than just the Packers are a better franchise, though?
well, he's set. He doesn't
Clearly,
have
I don't think he's going to a better O line. He's going to a place that actually has another running back that sees work,
who sucks and they
and he's going
tried to
to a
get rid of.
pass-heavy offense.
I just think that when you put talented people in a good offensive scheme, and they brought him in for a reason. They let go of Aaron Jones. They wanted to get younger, and they didn't want to pay Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones was good. Aaron Jones was a good back, and with AJ Dillon's there, barely. They tried to not bring him back. And I just think that Josh Jacobs, there's not many people that can do 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns in a season, and he's one of those guys that could repeat that. He's still young, and it was just a weird situation. So, weird situation last year. So, I'm saying, he's not going to.
I have is that when players need volume to produce, that always sketches me out.
He was
Because if they don't
4.86
get the
yards a
volume that
carry
they need-
2 years ago.
Look at Zeke a couple years ago
Well,
when they
Zeke,
brought in Pollard. When Zeke went from having 30 carries a game to 20 to 15, he sucked. So if that happens to Josh Jacobs, I think he's a very similar player who's just so reliant on volume. Like, very reliant. Because he doesn't get good yards per carry.
1 year. 1 year. And it was last year. That's what
No. He had 1 year of good yards per carry. What about the other years?
4.02, which is good, 3.9, which is and then
That's not good.
4.75 his rookie year. He's a good back. He's I mean, we have differing opinions on Josh Jacobs, and that's fine. I just am on the side that it can work, and I expect it to work. And he's not my RB2 on the year. My projections. I just think he, as far as the landing spot, what we're trying to get at here, is a good landing spot, and I think he could benefit from that. Justin's on the other side. He has lots of yellow flags, potential orange, red flags. So we'll see. We'll see where we're at. So
What would you have for your picture perfect wide receiver?
my picture perfect wide receiver, going back to the Windy City, is Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen traded to the Bears, 4th round pick. I was pissed that we didn't trade. The Denver Broncos could have given up a 4th round pick to get Keenan Allen.
They wouldn't have traded with you.
Well, I don't know, bro. I'm just saying. I thought Keenan Allen would be, for this exact reason. He is a quarterback's best friend type of receiver, aka helping a rookie quarterback come into his own. He's reliable. He's a great route runner. He can work a lot of stuff underneath in great hands. He is a rookie quarterback's best friend. That's why I wanted Denver to trade for him, because I knew Denver was bringing in a new quarterback, and just even if it's a year rental, get him up to speed, get Bo Nix now up to speed, and I think that's what Caleb Williams is going to do. And I think this has the opportunity. I think Keenan Allen has the potential to usurp DJ Moore as the best fantasy option receiver on the Bears. Do I project that to happen? No, but do I think it'll be really close? I think it'll be pretty close. I think Keenan Allen will lead the team in targets. I think he has a really good chance at leading them in yards. I just don't know where the touchdowns will come. He is 32 years old, and he is on his way out, presumably. He's going to be a Hall of Fame type guy, And I just think that him being a security blanket, I think the Bears brought him in for a reason. They knew that they were taking a receiver in the draft, and they knew they were taking Caleb Williams. So if that's the case, why bring in Keenan Allen if not for him to be involved and help Caleb Williams come into his own and be a consistent, high floor fantasy option with the Bears this year?
Yeah, you had some good points on that. I just think that I think that Caleb Williams is going to have a lot of production, as most rookie quarterbacks don't, and there's a lot of mouths to feed. Cole Kmet's a great tight end.
And that's
DeAndre
true.
Swift is going to catch a lot of the backfield, and I think DJ Moore is probably the better talent at this point. So that's where my red flags are with that. But I do understand he had a great season last year when he was on the field. Um, there's not a reason why he can't repeat that as long as Caleb Williams is who they think he is. So
Right. And I think if he could have gone anywhere else, I mean, I don't know if there's too many better situations. Clearly, if he was the undoubted one on a team, that might be better. But I think just with the way that
if
the
you would have went
Bears,
to like the Jags, I would have been pretty excited about that.
yeah, but okay,
Somewhere
similar
where there's a
situation.
quarterback who, like the Jags or the Lions.
But think about that though. It's very similar, minus the rookie quarterback. If Keenan Allen
That's
would have
the
went to the
biggest thing,
Jags,
though.
well, but Trevor Lawrence isn't the greatest thing since sliced bread that he was supposed to be. So save
No,
for
but he passes the ball a ton. He has probably one of the highest passes per game.
But Trevor Lawrence was once upon a time a number one overall pick, and his stats haven't increased that much since then. He's kind of been status quo, very
and he
mid.
stuck the first 2 years, and that's why I'm hesitant on Caleb Williams.
I just don't think that they're that much different. And then this year, so if Keenan Allen went to the
And if
Jags,
they're not different, Keenan Allen's going to suck this year.
I'm talking about. I think to preface, I think Caleb Williams is going to have a good year. He's going to rival one of the better rookie campaigns. And if he were to go to the Jags, they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round, just like the Bears drafted Rome Odunze. They brought in Gabe Davis and they who else did they sign?
I think Shea Davis.
I feel like they signed someone else. If he would have come there, he would have been
Christian Kirk.
in Christian Kirk. So I think Christian Kirk could comp to DJ Moore.
See, I think DJ Moore is way more talented than anybody on the Jags.
And I agree.
Well, it depends on what you think, though, because right now I think DJ Moore is more talented than Keenan Allen, straight up.
And I think
But it is whatever you believe it between the two.
But regardless,
Miller Lite, beer of the day.
I was waiting for when we were going to get into it, but yeah, we grabbed some summertime. If anyone knows why it's American themed Miller Lite cans in the middle of June, you think they start a month early?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm all for it. Let's get it all patriotic up in this beer.
I think they definitely do because I mean they gotta sell them before, you know. You're not gonna sell it after 4th of July.
I'd buy it. It'd work for me.
I didn't even care if it was on the beer. I just bought it.
And underrated, drinking a beer from these 16-ounce bottle cans, aluminum bottles,
it makes you feel nice.
Oh, it's great. It's way better than a can. It's got the
It,
flow.
You don't need the koozie as much either. They don't condensate, and they're not as cold. They're a little thicker, I think. Yeah.
We're all for it. We try weekly to
Cool.
match up just our drink for the show. For better or for worse. I mean, for no real reason. I don't know. Just like to bring in a common drink, share a drink together.
Just so you guys can drink along with us.
Yeah. And talk some nonsense about landing spots that may or may not be garbage. But, Justin, what was your good picture perfect landing spot for new acquisitions at wide receiver this year?
I had Curtis Samuel.
Oh boy,
Curtis Samuel goes to the Buffalo Bills, and he is surrounded by a bunch of nobodies, really, at this point.
facts.
We hope Keon Coleman is Keon Coleman from Florida State.
He is, but go on.
Well, we hope that he plays as good as he did at Florida State, but you never know. He could end up being absolutely nobody as well. So I think Curtis Samuel goes to the only spot really in the league where he has 100% opportunity there. Even when he's been on teams with great wide receiver ones and twos, he still had relevance on the teams. When he was at Carolina, they had DJ Moore and I believe somebody else.
It won't open.
Come on, man.
Okay,
Be a
all right.
man.
We got
Open
it.
All right.
Continue.
Yeah, when he was in Carolina, he had relevance, and you had DJ Moore ahead of him. And then he goes to the Commanders, or whatever you want to call them. And he sits behind Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. He still has relevance. So he's a good wide receiver. I would liken him with somebody like Josh Palmer, but I would even put him a little bit more skilled than Josh Palmer. But I think he's a great wide receiver, too, who's going to have an immense opportunity on the Buffalo Bills. And he should at least be on your radar this season.
Yeah, and he's not. It's we're not talking about the elite options at wide receiver for fantasy.
No.
And he's just someone who is in a spot where he was productive last year. Towards the end of the year, he kind of reemerged with Sam Howell in that team in Washington. But he is talented. He just doesn't seem to go away. And like Justin said, he is a fantastic wide receiver too for a NFL team. And with a great team like the Bills having some ambiguity who could be their wide receiver one, that role is to be filled. And I don't think it's far-fetched to say that a 7-year vet who is talented can't take that, even though he never has had that. When there's no one else to rival it. Who's going to rival it? Chase Claypool? Khalil Shakir?
Oh.
If anything, I think
Maybe
Curtis.
Keon Coleman.
But Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel are complete different archetypes of receiver, and so think of it like Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs as far as types of players. And obviously, skill-wise, Stephon Diggs is better than Gabe Davis, but Keon Coleman can be the contested catch deep threat guy, and like Gabe Davis, and Curtis Samuel could be the Stephon Diggs, where it's a lot of comeback routes, short stuff, and a trusted option
Sweeps.
with Josh Allen. Exactly. So
Also, I bet you he gets a decent amount of rushing attempts this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'd be curious to go back and look. When I was looking at his stats, I was thinking I do remember him rushing the ball, watching the games. And so he's just a Swiss Army knife that has opportunity on a good team. So
like a budget Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, minus the weight and the power behind him, minus the beef, because he's 5'11", 195. He ain't beef, but he is a.
That's kind of beef.
For us normal human beings. I mean,
I'll weigh 150.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not a big guy in NFL standards, and we're not projecting him to be a top 24 wide receiver. No.
This is a wide receiver 3 that you can stick in your flex, or if you have somebody go down, you need to.
Yeah, you can get him in the 10th round, 9th, 10th round. So
you can stream off your bench.
Right. So someone's going to be the go-to guy for Josh Allen. More than likely, it'll be spread around, and he and Josh Allen will accumulate his yards and stats just like how Patrick Mahomes has the past couple years, just by spreading the ball around and being consistent. But in the 10th round,
he already did last year, the last half of the year.
Yeah,
Diggs was kind of irrelevant, and he did that. So
and there's opportunity, and in the 9th, 10th round, who cares? Give it a shot. It doesn't matter. There's someone who's going to sit on your bench. You can see how they evolve, and then on bye weeks he will be a reliable option to plug in. So
Yeah.
I think Justin and I were we didn't intend for this to be we had differing opinions on a lot of these. Just kind of works out that way, and that's typically why I feel like we have such good conversations between the two of us on fantasy football, is because we both have different philosophies, differing opinions, and just overall thoughts around how fantasy value is acquired and how it's calculated. Um, but yeah, I think we're both on the same page with Curtis Samuel being a potential sleeper in his new pitcher perfect landing spot.
Yeah.
So those are our receivers, newly acquired receivers. What our thoughts are on them. We have quarterbacks next. There's not a lot of relevance, even worthwhile.
Who's your bad wide receiver?
Oh, did I not run through my bad one yet? Oh, that's right. I did not. Oh, you didn't do yours either. I'm skipping a page.
No.
All right. So forget the quarterbacks. It's not that exciting. We'll get to that at the end. So I have what could be a hot take, but I don't think really is. My not so picture perfect landing spot and expectations that surround this receiver are based on history. They're based on opportunity and lack of coming forward with good options and good seasons out of those opportunities. And it's Hollywood Brown. He is now set to be the quote unquote wide receiver one for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I just don't buy it. He's had opportunities to be wide receiver ones, and he's just never been the type to really grab the bull by the horns and make himself fantasy relevant. He's been a tease for 5 years. For 5 seasons, he's been a tease because he's had that opportunity. He's had that skill, and he comes from Oklahoma, and he was a great offensive prospect, and he was a wide receiver one for MVP Lamar Jackson. Let's just see if we can get him the damn ball and accumulate some fantasy points. And it just hasn't really come to fruition. He's had over 1,000 yards once, 1,008 yards to be exact, in his final year in Baltimore. And then he goes to Arizona with what I think is one of the top tier upper echelon quarterbacks in the NFL, just from NFL standards, in Kyler Murray. And with a 30 plus or a 29-year-old DeAndre Hopkins in that first year, he scored 3 touchdowns. And he's had opportunities to be a 1A, 1B, just depending on injuries and who's available, and it hasn't really come to fruition. So I don't think that just by plugging him in with Patrick Mahomes he's going to be able to take advantage of that like he's being talked about as, and not to mention Rashee Rice, who came onto the scene towards the latter half of last year. Yes, he's going to be suspended for X amount of days to start the year, but I don't think that it is going to make that much of a difference. Maybe the first 6 weeks of the year or however many, he's going to be more involved without Rashee Rice, but I just don't have confidence that it's going to make a world-changing, drastic difference that he's being talked about as.
I think with him, it's all about perspective. Because we just talked about Curtis Samuel, who you could almost say is like in a very, very similar position. But I would even argue that Hollywood Brown is a better athlete than Curtis Samuel and has been a better wide receiver than Curtis Samuel has been. But he got drafted to be a guy. So that's how we viewed him, and so we see him as a disappointment. But I do think he holds value on your fantasy football team because he's going to the best offense in the league. And he's been productive to a point in the league so far. Actually, when DeAndre Hopkins wasn't there, the first 6 games of that season, he was very productive, scoring 10, 15 points a game. So I think not only could he do that for you the first half of this game with the Rashee Rice suspension, but who knows? Maybe he's still a young guy. He could break out and be the one for this team, which any one for this team is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, the sentiment around that was Sky Moore, MVS, guys
Yeah,
brought
but
in
well, okay, but Sky Moore,
McCole Hardman when
Sky Moore
Tyreek
never
left.
came. That's what I'm talking about. This perspective there is because Sky Moore is a rookie who just never did anything, right? Hollywood Brown has had good seasons. Like having 1,000 yards receiving in a season is a huge accomplishment for a wide receiver. And he's done that before. So I just think it's all about perspective. Like
Yeah, I mean, and I just checked in a recent mock draft I did. He went as the first pick in the ninth round. Um, he went right at.
right next to Curtis Samuel.
Well, no, Curtis Samuel is borderline undrafted, um, if not undrafted. And I'm looking at this
Okay.
this
Well,
mock
that does
draft.
prove my point with Curtis Samuel though, because I view them in a very similar spot.
Yeah, Curtis Samuel went
Where
at the
should be drafted them.
12:08 in this draft with Hollywood Brown at the 9:01. But for context, this he went right before Brock Bowers. He went before Najee Harris. He went before Keon Coleman. He went before D Hop. He went before Lad McConkey, Deontay Johnson, and he went right after Calvin Ridley, Xavier Worthy. So, not to mention Xavier Worthy too. Who who can be that guy?
Yeah, you mean John Ross 2.0.
You know you don't believe that in your soul. You like Xavier
I
Worthy.
think when we watched the tape, I thought that his route running was actually very good. I thought he had a
He
really
didn't
good
look
route
like a
tree.
one-trick pony.
He did not look like it, but I am scared of him.
That's PTSD.
It's
That's
hard not
Chiefs
to be.
PTSD, bro. And they've
It's not even the Chiefs. It's just his archetype.
and the Chiefs have fallen in love with that archetype. It's like the ex that the girl that keeps going back to the same type of dude, going to the same bar,
Yeah.
picking up the same guy, and being
Yeah,
like, "There's
the
no good
Chiefs
guys out
love
there."
to get black eyes from the receivers.
What does that have to do with anything? That's the whole league.
You brought up that the ex going back to the abusive boyfriend.
Okay, whatever. Moving on. I think his expectations are outside of what is realistic. I think the range of outcomes is extremely wide, and I just don't want to bother with it. If you're comfortable with the 9th round draft price for him, fine. Not many people have that opportunity to be the one with Patrick Mahomes. I'm cool with it. I just don't think. I think that the proof has been in the pudding for 5 years, and we're not going to get much more than what we're seeing here. So, in a muggy depth chart between the first round rookie Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, and Travis Kelce as always. So, I digress. Justin, who is not in a picture perfect landing spot for you? We're waiting.
Stefon Diggs.
Yes, we know. You're a hater.
Yes, for good reason too. Stefon Diggs had a terrible end to last season. He is old. He is going to a team where he is going to be eclipsed by 2 other superstars. And honestly, I don't think the Texans have a great defense, and I believe they even just added on to their defense in the draft this year. I don't think they're going to even pass as much as they did last year, and they didn't really pass that much last year. For a rookie, they did, but for just the context of teams in general throughout the league, I would say they're probably middle of the pack. So I just think that there's too many mouths to feed on that team, and I don't think he's the best receiver anymore on the Texans. I think that he's maybe the second best, but most likely the third best option on that team at this point. And even then, you have a good tight end in Dalton Schultz. So what's probably going to happen is all 3 receivers are not going to be great. But it's more than likely that Stefon Diggs is going to be the worst of the 3, in my opinion.
It's really tough to rank these guys, and it sucks that we have to group them all into a group of 3 Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, and Nico Collins. But you kind of have to because they each
Honestly, I
are.
would have loved if he went to the Bills.
If Stephon Diggs could have gone to the
It,
Buffalo Bills and assumed that
it,
wide receiver one role with Josh Allen, I bet that would have been
that would be crazy. I would love to
fantastic.
see him with Josh Allen.
Dude, he would be Josh Allen's number one guy, guaranteed.
I bet 100%. And he could show Keenan Coleman some things for
I
sure.
bet you they would even win the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs and make the Super Bowl.
Well, no, I don't think so.
No?
No, I don't think so.
No, see, like, I could see him losing the first year, just like
I could
staring
see
at the
them losing in
confetti.
like the first 13 or the I could see them losing in like the last 13 seconds probably.
There's no way. The defense,
Yeah,
there's no
probably.
way. The defense for the Bills would buckle down and they would get it taken care of.
I don't know, man.
Anyways, we're from the future and we've seen everything happen. But I hate that we have to lump the three of them into the same conversation.
It sucks because I like all three as individual players.
Exactly.
I
But
think Stephon Diggs is aging, but I don't think that he is on his deathbed here. I think that he's still a great player, but I just think that Tank Dell and Nico Collins have already emerged. They've already built that chemistry with CJ Stroud. They have that rookie to rookie connection. Um, so I just don't think that he is going to see the most targets on the team.
that's the thing. Every option on the Texans out of these three options, they all have something overwhelmingly positive going for them.
Yeah.
And it's all different. Like Nico Collins, the year he had last year, positive. The contract, positive. Tank Dell, the rookie emergence, positive. He was great before he got injured. That's positive. He was injured, whatever. Stephon Diggs, he has been Stephon Diggs his career, and he's been great. That's a positive. The only negative Diggs has coming in is the last
I think that
6
is
weeks.
part of it, is that he's the only receiver who has a negative. I mean, Tank Dell has an injury, but he's young. No one really cares.
I mean, Nico
But
Collins had a lackluster start to his career. Really, this was his
okay,
exploding
rookie
year.
season
Well,
without CJ Stroud.
well, I know. I'm just.
Bro, he had long neck, doofus head.
I'm just saying he
as his
goes from
quarterback.
481 yards and 2 touchdowns to almost 1,308 last year. And I get the CJ Stroud.
Long neck, doofus head.
I know.
That's what it was.
But I was playing devil's advocate, talking about they all have something positive. Diggs only is the only one that has something negative. Like no, there was some, he's this will be his fourth year and he's only had one good year. Do I project that to move forward? No, but I'm just saying
Actually, this is his third year, so that's news to me.
yeah, he was a rookie in 2021.
Oh.
So I'm just saying, as far as on their resume, the negative pieces, like there is some, but the feeling of all of these players and the general vibe around them is overwhelmingly positive. But Diggs
If
has
Nico
the
Collins
little
hadn't
piece.
gotten the contract, it would be different.
You think so? But we're talking redraft just this year. Diggs landing there.
Well, Dynasty, both those. I mean, Stephon Diggs is 1 year rental. So
I think he could play himself into a year or two more with the Bills.
I
or,
think that if he
Texans.
does, he's going to ask for way too much money.
I don't think he has the
So
grounds.
It's
He's
going to depend.
30
gonna
years
depend
old.
Who they have coming up that they need to pay this year? Is Nico? Oh wait, no. Okay, Nico Collins. Yeah, we'll see. Dalton Schultz maybe. They might have to pay him. Larry Tunsil, I don't know what his contract situation is. So
yeah,
yeah, we'll see.
it's I'm more positive on Diggs than Justin is. I like to bank on history a lot, and
He likes to take wide receivers that have two other good wide receivers around him on teams that might not be that productive in the passing game.
wow, that one went deep. that was you just twisted the knife. I
I'm
like
sorry, I just
his.
don't understand it. I understand the Stephon Diggs and Keenan Allen. I love both of them as receivers. I've been a fan.
Maybe
I
I'm just
love
loyal.
watching them.
Maybe I just don't like to move on. Maybe I just like to
But
to enjoy the
they're
greatness.
now being buried in offenses that I mean the Bears are not going to have a insanely pass heavy offense, and the Texans I don't see them taking a giant leap forward in the pass attempts. So I don't see where's the production going to come from. If he's touchdown dependent, then I could see it. But if you're talking about yards, which I feel like Stephon Diggs has been more of a producer through his yardage than his
He's been an
touchdowns.
everything guy. I mean, 8 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns each of the last 4 years, and even when he was in Minnesota, he had eight
But
eight
eight touchdowns
touchdowns.
isn't that insane. So I mean that even proves my point. Like,
I
because
mean,
what Mike Evans has had 10 plus
he
or
had
something like that the
13,
last
and it
couple
was the
years.
best in the league last year. So 8 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns, 11 like that. That's a great
Yeah, but
number.
when you're in the top, it's you know the gap is not that big. You know.
I'm just saying, I'm higher on Diggs. Do I expect him to do what he did with the Bills the past couple years, minus that last stretch of last year? No, I don't. But do I think it is in the range of outcomes? Yeah, sure. So it's one of those wait and sees, and we talked about it in our show, ranking wide receivers, how we're like, I just don't even want to bother with the Texans because it's either going to be great or it's going
That's
to
my thing.
suck.
I don't even care if Stephon Diggs falls. Well, if he falls to like really low, but he won't. His ADP will stay high.
He was drafted in that same mock draft. He was drafted at the 307, third round.
That's what I'm saying. That's insane. That's actually insane.
He went before Nico Collins, who was at the 310. And then let's see, where did Dell come in on here? I'm curious to see what they were valued, relative to each other.
I don't mind you ranking him over Dell, to be honest with you, because they're similar receivers.
Well, he went over Dell in this mock draft.
So
Tank Dell went in the fifth,
I don't
508.
hate that because I think the receiver who's safest is Nico Collins because he's a possession outside catch receiver anyways. So and that's not what Diggs or Dell does. So I think Diggs is more so going to cut into Tank Dell's production more so than Nico Collins.
I think that's true. I feel like that's accurate. But regardless, would we have preferred him to stay in Buffalo and run it back one more time, even with the new offensive coordinator and how he finished last year? Yes, we would have preferred that. So not so picture perfect. Lots of opportunity, but it's muddy, and we'll see. So definitely not worth the 307 draft price, in my opinion, that he was taken here. So all right, now can we talk about the quarterbacks?
Let's do it.
All right, bet. So, like I mentioned, there isn't a lot of relevant quarterbacks that change positions and are set to be difference makers. So we'll run through the main ones and our general thoughts. So the biggest one, and I think is going to be overwhelmingly positive for fantasy purposes, is our boy Kirk Chainz. So Kirk Cousins coming into Atlanta. Lots of opportunity, lots of promising weapons in Atlanta. New system, got rid of Arthur Smith. And
Did you say Farther?
oh, I said Farther. Like a
Farther?
fart. Like Farther.
The fart man himself.
Got rid of Arthur Smith. Now he gets to doom the Steelers, which I'm all for. But
He's like Matt Patricia, though. It'll be good as an offensive coordinator.
Gross. The Falcons have a ton of young weapons, ton of promising weapons, and they just needed some consistency, and that is Kirk Cousins. Before his injury last year, Kirk Cousins was in our league, in our format, he was the number one quarterback at a certain point in time. I think through like 4 or 5 weeks, something like that. I actually picked him up off of waivers.
Yeah. Josh Jefferson was going insane, so that makes sense.
That's what I'm saying. He was the quarterback one and he was on our waiver wire because he's vanilla ice cream. Have you seen this man? The dude wears the same flannel button down every day of his life. Like, he is the epitome of boring consistency. But he has some. If you decide to take quarterback late in your draft, he will not fail you. Like, he's not going to give you dud weeks on a consistent basis. He will be able to be a weekly starter for you with high upside because of the weapons that are around him now. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan is set to be used more in the passing game. Look at all of the fantasy points that have been accumulated to Brock Purdy based off of Christian McCaffrey's passing ability. I view that similar to what Bijan can do. So there's a lot of upside and hope with Kirk Cousins and the Falcons this year. Whether it comes to fruition remains to be seen. We can't predict the future. We can just see what they have in the tank and see if they can let it loose. So I'm positive on Kirk. I don't buy into the Achilles injury being that much of a hindrance. He was never a super mobile guy. He stands strong in the pocket, and he's just extremely accurate and very smart football player. So that is something that is floating around going against him. And for what it's worth, they took Michael Penix, number 8 overall. I don't think that that has any indication on Kirk Cousins year one. Not this year. Maybe next year, for sure the year after that, depending on how he performs and how the team's playing. But this year, I don't think the Achilles or Michael Penix pose an issue for his fantasy outlook. And I think it's a great spot.
I actually have him as my doo-doo player, so I'm just going to rebuttal you right here. We'll just get into it since it's fresh in our mind. Here's the thing. As a quarterback, I don't think anything's going to change for Kirk Cousins. I think he's going to be just as good as he was in the Vikings. He's got great options to pass to, like you said, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. The issue is, I do think for fantasy reasons, as a quarterback option, I think he's going into a worse scenario. I think T.J. Hawkinson so far is a better receiving option than Kyle Pitts.
Obviously.
I think Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison is better than Drake London and whoever else they have. And then obviously you had Dalvin Cook and, Alexander Madison there before in the backfield. But so I just think that he's not necessarily – he's going into a great offense, but I don't think he's going into a better offense. So that's my hesitation with him. And I'm not saying that he's going to be somebody you shouldn't draft late. I'm just saying that I don't think he's going to be better than he was on the Vikings.
But the reason we're bringing this up isn't just a Kirk Cousins take as a whole. It's the landing spot and how we think that they're going to perform here relative to where they were. If it's the same, I'm cool with that. And you mentioned it, if it wasn't better, like that's fine. He can produce at a high level, just like.
Well, no, I was saying that it's going to be worse. Drake London, he's a great prospect, but he's never been a great wide receiver. Justin Jefferson's been the best wide receiver we may have ever seen.
Yeah,
he's going from the best wide receiver we may have ever seen since Randy Moss, or even maybe he'll eclipse him one day, to Drake London, who is supposed to be one but has never been one.
Yeah.
So, and then I don't know who's after that. Whereas Kirk Cousins had Jordan Addison, who's even, we don't know. I mean, he had one of the best rookie seasons.
Yeah. So
last year as a wide receiver. So.
Yeah, let us know what your guys' stance is on Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. We will post a poll on Instagram this week.
Yeah.
If you guys want to vote on that.
Yeah, it's a wide range of outcomes.
On Instagram.
Yeah, and I think it's a fun conversation starter, and I think a lot of people have differing opinions, and I think it's net positive. Justin thinks it's net negative. But otherwise, or nonetheless, it's going to be exciting to watch. I'm actually going to be looking forward to watching the Falcons play instead of closing my eyes every time the offense came out.
Oh, it's a positive to watch Falcons for sure.
Yes, it
It's
is.
positive for the Falcons, what I was trying to say, but for fantasy, it's a negative in my eyes.
Yeah, 100%. So he was my pitcher perfect landing spot at quarterback. Justin, who is yours?
Mine was Gardner Minshew. I think he probably went to the only place where he's going to see opportunity. He was actually a decent streaming quarterback last year when he was on the Colts. And as much of a homer as I am, we didn't have Adonai Mitchell back then. Everything's going to change this year as far as our receiving core goes. We got the best receiver in the draft. But last year we didn't have him. So, I will admit, I think Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers is a better receiving core than Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. So I don't see any reason why he shouldn't do better than he did last year, and he was a great streaming quarterback last year.
Yeah, 3,300 yards, which is the biggest number there.
It's a lot.
15 touchdowns and 9 picks isn't great, but he did punch in. He had 100 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. I saw him put his.
That's also through Anthony Richardson started the first 3 or 4 games as well. So
yeah, so he played, behind Anthony Richardson to start the year, and I should have put the graphic here. I love the graphic comparing Gardner Minshew and Trevor Lawrence, their stats throughout the same years, showing that Gardner Minshew has actually played better quarterback, or has been a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence since Lawrence has come into the league. I think it's absolutely hilarious. And
I love it as a Colts fan.
But you also have to bake in, and for the record, I like Gardner Minshew, and I think he will take the starting job. But, Aiden McConnell did a serviceable job last year as a rookie.
O'Connell.
Yes. What did I say?
McConnell.
Isn't that exactly what you said last episode, too? You said, you don't even know Aiden McConnell. And I said, Aiden O'Connell.
Aiden O'Connell.
I know who Aiden O'Connell is.
I've never said that. I would never say that in my life.
You said it. Anyways.
I never would do that. I didn't do fucking shit. I didn't do that. I'm done.
If anyone doesn't get the reference, they should. You stop what you're doing, cut off the show.
Cancel me out of dinner.
And go watch it. But regardless, Gardner Minshew still has to take the starting job, which I presume he will, at least for this year. Oh, I saw a monster. I saw a monster. Guys, you can go follow Zelda on Instagram at Last Call Zelda.
Yep. Last Call Zelda.
Oh, she's expecting. For the listeners on audio, Justin's dog Zelda hopped up in. Oh. She hopped up in the background, and now she's gracing us with her presence. And now she's going to sit and hang out. So Zelda can now comment on how trash Justin's takes have been.
She may actually
hour and 3 minutes.
elevate the show.
Well, she can't do any worse than you.
Don't let me get you in your way, Zelda.
All right, let's wrap this up. Oh, we're doing good on time. So let's wrap this up.
Great.
Gardner Minshew, I think, is a net positive. I think, as a Devontae Adams believer, I think this is great news for him. He's just a solid dude. He is a competitor. He wants to win, and he gets a lot of stuff done. He is set up to succeed, was brought in for a reason, I think, both for depth and competition, QB competition purposes in Vegas. And as happy as it makes me see the Raiders not level up a ton at quarterback as a Broncos fan in the draft this year, I think that they are being smart and playing the long run and doing a transition year with a new coach and seeing what comes of it, and they'll look to the future in the future.
Similar to what the Colts did.
Right. So moving on, my not so picture perfect quarterback spot, and it gives me great joy to speak of this man as a disgruntled Broncos fan, it is Mr. Danger Witch, Russell Danger Wilson. He had a decent overall fantasy finish last year, but from watching the games, he got extremely lucky. There was one game that the Denver got essentially a 60-yard Hail Mary at the end of the game that catapulted him into a top 5 fantasy option that week. He doesn't take care of the ball anymore. He only threw 8 picks last year, but look at his fumbles. Lost 5 fumbles. So add that to the picks list as far as I'm concerned. He just doesn't provide that same Russell Wilson level of fantasy relevance as we saw in Seattle. I think he's on the way out. I don't think he's going to level up the likes of George Pickens and Allen Robinson and Pat Freiermuth and who the hell else is on that team. I mean, I don't think he's going to. I mean, as hard as it sounds, he has a worse receiver core in Pittsburgh than he did in Denver, and I just don't see it being a net positive for fantasy purposes. Take George Pickens and who over Cortland Sutton and Judy, and they ain't much.
George Pickens is over Cortland Sutton by a mile.
I think you're
at
high.
This point in Cortland Sutton's career. If you give me second year Cortland Sutton versus George Pickens, okay, but right now I'm taking George Pickens by a mile.
I'm just saying.
Pat Freiermuth is great to head in.
He's fine. But as far as Russell Wilson, his change of scenery, Russell Wilson was a streamable quarterback last year. You know, he was fine for fantasy. But as far as what we're trying to get at here and seeing what the landing spot is going to do for him, there's nothing.
I do keep forgetting about that point.
Yeah, there's.
I let my bias get in the picture.
I know we're coming at it from a mindset of past perspective to current reality. You know, right. What has changed? Everyone knows Russell Wilson sucks, and if they don't turn on the TV,
very similar position.
Exactly.
I don't think there's going to be much change. I think he's going to give about the same relevance to receivers that the receivers in Denver had. It's a very net neutral trade, I see.
Yeah, but coming from a guy who's making over $30 million a year this year, it isn't like Denver was the poison in the situation. It wasn't, that experiment proved not the situation. They had plenty of opportunity to level.
I think it proved that the Broncos were not a quarterback away. I think the Broncos organization realized that once they got him. But I also think it also proved that Russell Wilson was very dependent on the Pete Carroll system that he was in.
Yeah, and for a guy who's making over $30 million a year to be moved into a new situation, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Being like, oh, this star quarterback was a victim of his circumstance, and now he's out with the titan of the Steelers in the NFL landscape. I don't think that the Steelers in Pittsburgh is going to be his savior. So I think, and I told Justin before we clicked record, that it wouldn't shock me if Justin Fields started several games at quarterback, or if
wouldn't shock.
Russell Wilson
I doubt it would shock. Well, what I said is I think they're going to start at the same time, and it's going to be a wildcat.
Well, that could be cool.
Situation.
But
Taysom Hill thing for Justin Fields.
Just to preface, I did say Russell Wilson's making over $30 million a year, but the Steelers are not paying him that $30 million a year. They're throwing him a couple bones to come play for them, knowing that Russell Wilson's happy because he's still getting a check cut. So they don't have, even though he's getting that money.
For fantasy football, I think it's really scary. He's not going to be a streaming quarterback this year. For one, because he could get benched at any quarter, anytime for Justin Fields. So if you want to stream him, even if he is doing halfway decent for the Steelers, you just never know. He could throw 2 picks, and he's out of there. So he's on a much shorter leash than he was on the Broncos when he was with Ben DiNucci or whoever they had over there.
Right, because they don't have that investment into him. They're throwing him a couple $1 million. I mean, like, hey,
they're probably paying more for Justin Fields at the moment.
I would love to see
I would
those
not be surprised.
numbers, and
I think they have to be.
I don't know. It's just it gives me great joy to shit on this man after he got my hopes up for 2 years and I was dealt the product I was. So, not so picture perfect because he's not going to level up to what people expected at Denver, and this being the fix. So, that wraps us up because Justin went through. Kirk Cousins was his not so picture perfect landing spot at QB. We are at an hour and 10 minutes, so we're making progress.
Get it?
We did what we set out to do for the most part, but we had a great time running through these landing spots. Free agency is one of our favorite times of the year. Just assessing what these new landing spots would look like, how it's going to shape the landscape of the upcoming NFL year. Trading is fun in fantasy and in real life football. We'd love to see how that's going to affect each individual team, and for our silly game we like to play, it affects a lot as well. So appreciate everyone for making it an hour and 11 minutes in, and we're gonna wrap up. So you can follow us on X at Last Call Carl and Last Call Curry, Instagram Last Call Fantasy Football, or youtube.com/Last Call Fantasy Football. But without further ado, don't miss out on the last call for fantasy football. See you next time.